The eyewear for this video was kindly supplied by Gaijimbo.com. Click the link below in the description. Enjoy free shipping and get $5 off every first pair with the code 5FREE. Look good and look good. Enjoy the video and subscribe. Okay, well, let's give them a few more moments just to see if they show up. How are you finding everything? Yeah? Oh. It can be a little bit intimidating at the start. And, if you ever feel overwhelmed or just want someone to talk to, you can always reach out to myself or one of your other tutors or lecturers, and we're always happy to help. Well, I think that we've given them quite enough time, so it looks like you have a one-on-one seminar to start off your semester. I hope you don't mind. So it'll just be me and you for now, but I'll go over everything just as I would have done with everyone else. Or sometimes it happens. Freshers Week can claim many victims. But anyway, so one-to-one, your first seminar. Welcome to the first semester of creative writing. Now, we will be working on different techniques that you can employ, not only to improve your writing finesse, but also to improve your idea generation, as well as looking at the fundamental building blocks of storytelling, different storytelling traditions, the oral tradition, the written tradition, song tradition even, all the different types of storytelling that you can employ, Kierkegaard's different techniques, other things like that we'll touch on throughout this semester. Now, of course, this is your first year, so although nothing counts towards your final grade, all this work is very important to prepare you for what's coming up next. So in a way, it's kind of more important than your work will be in later semesters. Okay? Now, I don't mean to patronize you in any way, but one thing that I always do in the first seminar that we have in Creative Writing 101 is to actually go over some of the really basic grammatical pieces that we use, different parts of speech. Now, I apologize if you already know this. I've had a few people who've come in and say, look, I wouldn't be doing degree level creative writing if I didn't know what a noun was, which is fine. But some people don't. Some people are talented creative writers or amazing at English without knowing the fundamental building blocks of what they're employing. I always sort of liken it to an artist. You can appreciate colour, the hues, the tones, all that combination of creativity, but you don't necessarily need to know the names of each colour. You could guess something is blue, but to someone else it might be an azure or something like that. So I'm always very mindful of the fact that people who start this course are entering it at entirely different levels of not just aptitude, but education as well. So that's just a roundabout way of me saying that. I apologize if you already know any of this. I'm sure you do. But it's something I go over as a matter of course, and then we move on to how we can use these parts of speech and writing to create stories, to entertain people. Okay? So I would ordinarily sort of ask out loud if anyone knew what these things were, but because it's just you and I will just go over each one. So the first one, which you probably know already, is a noun. Now, a noun is, of course, a word or phrase that represents a person, a place, a thing, an activity, or an idea. So, for instance, dog is a noun. Now we have different types of nouns. For example, love is an abstract noun. Hate is an abstract noun. A place or a name is a proper noun. London, the Thames, Brighton, whatever. And nouns can refer, like I said, to a quality or an idea. Those are abstract. But nouns are things. They are the things that are in our story. Now, when we use a word like you, or she, or he, or whatever pronoun you want, that's called a pronoun. Now, that refers to a word that is used instead of a noun or a phrase in a sentence. So where we might say the dog, we would say he or she or it. And that would be based on the context of the sentence. So we might have said, the dog did well in politics. He eventually became dog minister. Terrible example, but you understand what I'm saying. So the idea is that based on context, we no longer need to necessarily use the noun or the proper noun. We can move on to use a pronoun, which is a replacement for that word. We have different types of pronouns. The personal pronoun, of course, is I, and things like that, yours, whatever. And it's just a way of assigning possession to something, but also to sublimate it with something else. Okay? Now, I'm sure you know, but do you know what a verb is? Well, I'm going to tell you anyway. As I said, a verb is a doing word, so it refers to an action or an expression of intent or an expression of state of being. So, for example, that dog who ran for government for some reason, perhaps he is running for government. And that's a verb. That's something that the noun is doing. So, the dog is running for whatever I said it was, dog minister. Okay? So that dog is running. The noun is the dog, and the verb is running. Now, we get into the bit where people sometimes find it a little bit more confusing, which is adjectives and adverbs. Now, both of them, you can guess by the name add something to whatever we were talking about before. So the dog, let's say he is a very kind dog. Okay? That is an adjective. The kind dog. The dog is kind. The adjective is a quality of the noun or pronoun. Okay? So adjective is used to describe a noun. Now an adverb, rather handily, is used to describe a verb. So for example, the kind dog is running for government. If we were going to put an adverb in there, what could we put? Now, he might be running a very efficient campaign. So we could say something like, the kind dog is running efficiently for government. Again, usually I have an example prepared. I don't know where this whole sort of government dog thing came about, but I hope that you can forgive me. So the adverb describes the verb, the adjective describes the noun. So the kind dog is running efficiently for government. Now in there, we've used a couple of little conjunctions called articles. Do you know what an article is? Some people don't know this. That's one of the things English speakers who are native, certainly to the UK, don't tend to learn the ins and outs of the language, how it actually works, how you put things together. So they're always a bit surprised when they learn that there are words for these words. In this example, an article is one of the little words, the, a, or an. Now, a or an, you can work out that based on whether or not the next word starts with a vowel. So, a vote, an election. Okay, so a vote is when a consonant is used in the word that you are assigning the article to, and an is used when there's a vowel. So that is used before a noun to modify the noun. Now what do I mean by this? Because the is also an article. Now the, or the, is what we call the definite article. If you say the dog, there's only one dog, and you're referring to a very specific dog, the kind dog in this instance. So we know that this dog is kind, and there's only one dog who is kind, okay? So that's why we call him the kind dog, because it's a definite article. It is referring specifically to, in this case, the kind dog who runs for office. A and an are indefinite articles. So if we were to say a kind dog, that's not specific. We could be referring to a myriad of different kind dogs. And ultimately, what that means is that it's not definite, it's indefinite. It's the same with an. Like if it was an eel, the eel. Specific, non-specific. Now, what else do we have? Prepositions. Do you know what a preposition is? So a preposition is a word that is used before a noun or a pronoun to show a place, time, direction, things like that. So like above, that kind of thing. Okay. So the kind dog was above other dogs, which is why he was the kind dog. That displays where they are. And then similarly to a preposition, we have a conjunction. Now a conjunction is again a small word, but it denotes the connection between other words, for example, or, and, so, after. So, after the kind dog was elected. That's a conjunction, usually used in the middle of a sentence to connect two things. So the kind dog and his best friend ran for government. And is the conjunction, because it's conjoining two things, right? And then finally, let's go with interjection. So like objection, like your phoenix right. Now, that's used to express or to show a strong feeling or emotion if you interject. So you could expand the virtues of the kind dog's policies on the judiciary, and you might interject with something passionately. Okay? Now those are like basically 9 major parts of speech that we use. And all of these different parts combine to form sentences, which in turn combine to form perhaps complex sentences. And then these in turn combine to form paragraphs. And these paragraphs fit together to form pages or whatever, and chapters, and then stories. And that is why we're here today. So I know it's a bit of a long preamble, a bit silly, I know, but we need to understand the different tools, the different parts that we have, that we can utilize, that we can pick to put together to make a story. Okay? So, creative writing. What does that mean to you? Well, it can mean a lot of different things. Creative writing doesn't have to be innately creative. You don't have to create something new. The creation is the important part. I think a lot of time people get confused between creation, creativity, and innovation. Creation doesn't mean innovation. It means creating something. Innovation is trying to do something new. When you write something, we wouldn't have, if people were worried about coming up with something new, we wouldn't have Mills and Boon, we wouldn't have all of the crime thriller novels that we have, and we certainly wouldn't have as many of the period dramas on television that we do. With that in mind, you should write something that you want to create. Now, I know that sounds redundant, but the biggest difference between someone who writes and someone who doesn't is actually doing it. So you don't have to write something completely original, something innovative. You have to write something for you that you want to create, that you want to bring into the world. Okay? Now, with that in mind, because it's something that you want to create, that you want to bring into the world, it should be something that you're familiar with. Probably one of the best tips that anyone can get is, and it's an old, tired one, but write what you know. That way there'll be less mistakes. So I've always wanted to write a book about a nuclear physician who solves murders for the FBI. I can't write that book. Now, why can't I write that book? Well, because I don't have the prerequisite knowledge in order to write it. I could sit down and sort of haphazardly bash out a couple of chapters, but ultimately I'm going to have to get some expert insight into this. I don't know how the FBI works. I don't know how nuclear fission works. I don't know how to solve a murder. These are things that I would then have to consult with someone else. And as soon as I start doing that, is it me writing the book? Of course you can consult with experts. But the amount of time it would take you to then write that story, can you imagine? If I had to go and spend 10 years working with the FBI to learn how they work, 10 years in a nuclear reactor, and then 10 years murdering people, well, I wouldn't finish my book, would I? And so what I mean is that it's much easier to write what you know. If you're a student, if you're a professor, write about that. Add a spin to it, of course. Like a book just about you and I having this seminar potentially wouldn't be very exciting. But a book about this seminar turning into an adventure where we charter a boat and try to find the lost city of Atlantis. Now that's exciting. And that's about the experience of the person who has your experience. So you can write about the FBI and murder if it's you experiencing it, because you'll know just as little as you would writing about the FBI. Sorry. You'll see that I ramble a little bit. I hope it's not too frustrating for you. I hope that it's at least a little bit enjoyable. But I guess what I'm saying is essentially, if you write what you know, you can't go too far wrong. So, first rule, write something. Second rule, doesn't have to be original. Third rule, write about what you know. So far, it sounds quite boring. That's why fantasy is such an attractive genre, and science fiction to an extent, although there are caveats with science fiction, especially real-world science fiction. Fantasy, though, you can create your world. The great fantasy writers of our age, Tolkien, Pullman, and let's even throw in George R.R. Martin as well. Brian Jakes, I think is another one I enjoy. And Terry Pratchett. These people haven't been beholden to the real world. Their expertise lies in their created fiction. Now, if you create a world and you are then the source, the authority on that world, you can't make mistakes. So if you create a fantasy realm, you can do whatever you want. And that makes you still writing something you know, because you're making it up. It's a bit different with science fiction, because obviously people like to have science fiction grounded in some semblance of reality to make it relatable. So technology is typically quite comparable. But these are all little things you could research if you wanted to. The main thing here is to follow your imagination. Now, while I'm discouraging you from writing about something you don't know, creating something you know is a very elegant solution to work around that. A bit cheeky as well. Now, one of the things I'm going to ask you to do for your first bit of work outside of the seminar room is to write a short story. All right? Not long, just 500 words, but it should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. 9 out of 10 times, writers struggle with one of those milestones. Okay? For me, it's the end. I can never end a book. That's why I'm a professor and not, an unsuccessful writer. Some people can't begin a book. Some people start writing at the end, like London Fields, writing at the end and then working their way back. Murder mysteries are written like that, which makes sense when you think about it. But I want you to write a 500-word story. I want you to take into consideration all the parts of speech that we mentioned and how those come together to form that story. I want you to think about writing something you know and combining it with something fantastical to make it different. Don't worry about it being completely original. Don't plagiarize. We have machines to detect that. But don't worry too much about it being, an homage to something or anything like that. And just before I send you away, because it has just been you and I, which I appreciate, could have been a little bit boring and a little bit intimidating, so I hope it hasn't been too bad. But just my last bit of advice, if you ever suffer from writer's block, sit down with a piece of paper and write one sentence. That's it. Invariably, you'll write more. But if you get it, do that, sit down, write one sentence, and let me know how you get on, okay? But I think we'll call it a day there. Hopefully a few more people will bother to show up next time, but thank you so much for showing up. It means a lot to my little class, and I think that we will go on over the course of the next couple of semesters to write some breathtaking works, okay? I really hope the rest of your first week goes okay, and try not to drink too much on Friday. Believe me, you'll regret it. All right, thank you. See you later. Bye-bye.